Bhagat, student of Tata Institute of Social Science from TIS Mumbai. So I'm the joint convener of Bhagat Singh Memorial Lecture Organizing Committee. So on behalf of BSML Organizing Committee, I welcome you all to this evening. It's an honor to have you all here in this evening of reflection, discussion, and learning. So talking about BSML, Bhagat Singh Memorial Lecture started as an Bhagat Singh Memorial Lecture began in 2018 with the purpose of remembering and celebrating the legacy of Shahid Bhagat Singh. Since then, it has become one of the largest student-led academic lectures where we come together not just to pay tribute to the revolutionary freedom fighter, but also to introduce the relevance of his ideas in today's world. Over the year, BSML has become popular and it has become one of the biggest student-led academic lecture. We had many reputed names in the field of academia, journalism, activism, including Dr. Chamanlal, Professor Gopal Guru, P. Sainath, and Samshul Islam. In recent years, but due to some restriction from the side of administration, we were not able to conduct via offline. We were restricted to do it in the online mode. Though we had this restriction, we were able to reach out to many students and to reach out to a larger student community. And this seventh edition of BSML has been jointly conducted by both students from TIS Mumbai and TIS Hyderabad campuses. Prior to this lecture, we have conducted many events such as week both the campuses both campuses of TIS Mumbai and TIS Hyderabad conducted a joint study circle on Martyrdom Day, reading and discussing Bhagat Singh's last document, a letter to young political leaders. Banner of Bhagat Singh and national competition on the theme Freedom and Rebellion. And recently, a day before yesterday, we were able to conduct a students' conclave where many students and student activists from all over the country, from different campuses, joined to discuss the attack on student rights and campus democracy. And it was a successful event. Many students reflected their opinion and discussed the attacks happening all over the country. So in this evening, the BSML organizing committee invite all of you to reflect your thought on the theme contemporary challenges to higher education in democracy and autonomy. So we are extremely honored to welcome our distinguished speaker, Professor M.B. Narayanan, a respected scholar, author, and former Vice-Chancellor of Sree Sankaracharya University of Sanskrit. Professor Narayanan holds a PhD from University of Exeter, UK, and has taught in institutions such as University of Sharjah, Miyazaki International University, Japan. His research covers a wide range of areas including cultural studies, popular culture, performance studies, and a traditional Indian theatre. His work has appeared in a national and international journals, and he has been actively involved with theatre festivals, documentation projects with UNESCO, and has contributed significantly to the study of Kathakali and Kuthiyatam. We are very grateful to have you with us, sir. We are also excited to have the session chaired by Dipsita Dhar, the dynamic student activist from JNU and All India Joint Secretary of SFI. She has been a strong and consistent voice for student rights and democracy on campus. We are glad you are also joining here. Welcome, Dipsita. So, in order to maintain the decorum of this session, I request everyone not to keep your queries and questions in the chat box, and I request everyone not to unmute yourself during the session. The flow of the session will be, the chair will be speaking for 10 minutes, and then the speaker will be starting the session. It will go around for 40 minutes, and meanwhile, if you have any queries or questions, put it in the chat box. We'll be discussing it in the end of the session. That's from my side. Over to you, Dipsita.
First of all, thank you so much. I want to extend my revolutionary greetings to all the comrades of peace, both in Hyderabad and in Mumbai, because the kind of struggle that all of you are leading, uh, your struggle has always been an inspiration for the larger student community. We all know what has happened to Comrade Ramdas. We all know why a Dalit boy was penalized for just asking some valid question to the power, to the authority. And the single incident of Ramdas is actually the biggest mirror for all of us who are sitting here to understand what had been the image or the condition of democracy and student politics in India. Uh, from 2014 onwards, we have seen the spaces of debate, the spaces of discussion, the spaces of dissent had been encroached by the Sangh Parivar, by the RSS, and the BJP-led government. The students or the university spaces were the first one to be attacked. It's quite natural because we all know that when the modern state was being formed, how the modern state has imagined how a university should be. A university should be a space where the modern citizen is made. Who is a modern citizen? Who can be part of the modern state? A modern citizen is an individual who do not see their identity and the state machinery as one thing. A modern citizen is someone who believes that a state cannot be an extension to certain kind of religious body, but a state has to be a non-religious a structure, a body that is going to govern people with equality, that is going to govern people with certain kind of fairness. So university was supposed to be a space where this kind of ethos, this kind of morality, this kind of consciousness can be taken care of, can be nurtured, and modern citizens are being made out of it. But we have seen from 2014 onwards, and especially after 2019, with the introduction of national education policy, this very idea of what is the role of university has been drastically changed. If you are going to look into the NEP policy, it's very clear. It is telling that university is going to be a place which is going to create workers, which is going to create laborers, cheap laborers to be very precise, cheap laborers who can be sold in the market, cheap laborers who can be used according to the need and whims of the big big capitalist powers. So it's very evident that to unlearn or to debunk the kind of India that all of us have fought for, to debunk the idea of India that Bhagat Singh had been martyred for, one has to first debunk or have to first deconstruct the young people of the country, the young minds of the country, the people who are supposed to think, the people who are supposed to ask questions, the people who are supposed to resist and rebel. So that's what the government from 2014 onwards have done. I still remember our first fight against the Narendra Modi government was when we saw our colleague, our comrade Rohit Vemula being institutionally murdered in Hyderabad Central University. We remember thousands of students spontaneously came down to the streets, and we all said that it's just not about one death, it's not about one boy being murdered. Why Rohit Vemula was killed, why Rohit Vemula was murdered is precisely because of his identity. His identity, his social identity, and also his political identity. His social identity because the government that we are working under, the BJP government, the
Ma'am,
democratic.
sorry to interrupt you, but Rohit Vemula was not killed. He suicide. He was
Uh,
not killed by anyone. He suicide
Shivang,
itself.
Shivang, I think
And
there's
then,
a
ma'am,
thing called
there is a
decorum.
official
I
document
would
of
love
there
to
is a
take your
official document of
questions. I would love to answer you, but as we know that when there is a decorum, if the speakers were supposed to speak and if there are spaces and time already given for you to ask question, I'd request everyone who differ with us, everyone who has some kind of dissent to put, you have the right to put it, but don't do it when the speaker or the chair or anybody else is speaking. You'll be given time, and every question that you are asking here, all will be answered duly. So don't worry, don't get paranoid. If at all you don't have any other political vendetta, just wait for it. We are going to come back to you. So Rohit Vemula was institutionally murdered. I reiterate my position. Rohit Vemula was killed. Rohit Vemula was killed because he was a Dalit. Rohit Vemula was killed because he was a student who liked to ask questions. Rohit Vemula was killed because he was a comrade of ours who didn't want a government, who didn't want an India where the Dalits or the women are oppressed because of their identity, because of their social location that they're coming from. I salute Rohit Vemula, the legacy of Rohit Vemula, because I believe the lecture series that we are doing in the name of Bhagat Singh, Comrade Rohit is the right, progeny of Comrade Bhagat Singh's idea. So back to what I was saying, 2014 onwards, the kind of struggle that we have seen, starting from Rohit Vemula, then against the University Grant Commission, where they tried to cut our fellowship, where they tried to take away our rightful fellowship from us. And we have seen that 2014 onwards, when the fascism was actually knocking on our doors, the first people to rise against those fascistic ideas, all those fascistic actions, were nobody else but the students, but the young people. And it is their struggle, it's the kind of resistance that they were putting, that somehow create a consciousness, that somehow created an alternate, that whenever there is authoritarian governments, wherever the fascists are trying to take our beloved country from us, the student, the youth, following the footsteps of Bhagat Singh, are going to rise. I believe Comrade Ramdas, he is also continuing that same legacy. Coming from the marginalized sections, coming from the downtrodden of this country, he's standing up for the ideas that Bhagat Singh has taught us. I'm not going to give a long speech. I believe we are here to listen to Professor, and you're going to, learn from him. So I'm just going to finish it off, and I'm going to hand over to you, sir. Just before that, ending my introduction, I think all of us who are here, irrespective of whatever our political ideology is or whatever our religious identity is, what we should all ask ourselves, standing in front of the mirror, that at a time when our country went through a demographic dividend, at a time when our country was the youngest country in the world, at a time when we were in the the epitome of having the highest number of young people, the highest number of human resources, what had our governments have done with us? What they have done for the young people of the India? Have they given us education? Have they taken care of our aspiration? Have they given us, employment? Have they created a society at least where people, irrespective of their, identity, can live together happily? When a Muslim boy, while traveling in the train, don't have to be scared that whether because of his name or his topi or his identity, he can be killed or not. Whether the India that Bhagat Singh has given his life for, whether for what our martyrs has given their life for, the kind of India that we are living in right now, does it give that similar kind of dreams and hope that Bhagat Singh would have thought of? With that, I would hand it over the session to Professor, and please, sir.
Thank you, Dipsita. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Yes, sir, you're right.
Thank you. Thank you for those very perceptive uh, introductory remarks. It's a great privilege uh, and an honor to be speaking at the 7th Bhagat Singh Memorial Lecture. I pay my homage to the legendary martyr in whose name this lecture is being held. I would have liked to say that this is a pleasure, but it is hardly a pleasure because we are not living in times where we can speak about pleasure or comfort or forget all those better terms, even safety. We cannot speak in those terms. And today, when we are addressing the issue of contemporary challenges in higher education, democracy and autonomy, we probably have to realize first and foremost that we are standing on a ground that is shifting with immense momentum. Today and tomorrow may appear to be just one day apart, but each day seems to bring into our polity, into our educational atmosphere, into our very lives, changes which we probably thought a few years back to be almost impossible. But the fact is, if we were to look back at how we lived, how we thought, how we functioned, how we taught, how we learned, say 10 years back, and how we do those same things today, If it is possible for us to go back in time and see what we were or our compatriots were 10 or 15 years back and how we are today, we'll be shocked because things have changed so much. The change doesn't appear to be so because we are living through it almost every day. Just like we don't see a child growing day by day, but if you don't see her for 2 years, you suddenly realize that she has grown. In the same way, changes are taking place, drastic changes are taking place every day. But because of this mundane life that we are living, this day-to-day scheme that we are part of, we don't seem to actually feel the change so much. Let me just put to you one simple idea. And that idea is that whatever is happening around us in terms of higher education, as Dipsita already mentioned, the disenfranchisement of students, the loss of scholarships, the regular interference from the authorities. The inaugural speaker spoke about how permission was denied for the holding of this lecture in an offline mode. Now, disparate as these different things may appear to be, and occurring in very, very different times, different locations, under the agency of different people and different institutions, what we need to realize is that there is a certain rationality playing behind all this. There is a larger game plan. There is an agenda. Agenda is to mind a word. There is a much larger vision of what higher education should be, what it should serve, or how it should serve within each of these changes that seem to be either conscious or unconscious, either deliberate or sometimes not so deliberate. That's the first thing that I would submit in this lecture. Whatever seems to be probably just something out of the blue, unconnected, isolated, there is nothing isolated. They are all interconnected. They are all part of a pattern. And being part of a pattern, what we probably require to understand is that pattern itself, the way in which that pattern works. Let me invite your attention to something that happened just a couple of days back, and which is actually drawing the attention of all the newspapers and media. And that's to do with this litigation between the Tamil Nadu government and the Tamil Nadu governor, where a two-bench of the Supreme Court, a two-member bench of the Supreme Court, came out in radical critique of the governor and said that he doesn't have the right to sit on the bills passed by the Tamil Nadu Legislative Assembly, effectively stalling and delaying and thereby annulling the bills passed, in a way almost trying to intervene, stall the workings of the legislature assembly. Now, quite a bit has been written about it by now. I myself have written about it. It is all seen as an issue of constitutional propriety. How long can a governor delay a decision taken by a legislation adopted by the legislature assembly, and a governor being a non-elected person, a nominated person, not being part of the democratic polity, so to speak, someone who is actually dropped down by the center onto the government, onto the state government, what kind of a right does he have to actually stand in the way of the will of the people as represented by the legislature or the legislative assembly? That is indeed the crux of the problem. And that is indeed the crux of the problem, because what we see in this entire scenario connected with governance, and that's why I've taken up governance, we'll come to the question of education from that. What we see in this entire scenario connected with governance in Kerala, in Tamil Nadu, in Andhra Pradesh, in Karnataka, in West Bengal, is that the center is actually engaged in proxy governance. We have a legislative assembly which have been elected by the people, properly elected by the people. There is a council of ministers who are there to represent the will of the people, but willy-nilly, almost through the back door, by stalling their will, their legislations, as well as by carrying out the imprimaturs, the instructions of the center, the governors seem to take up a position, an authority, a power that supersedes that of the legislature. This becomes important in a constitutional sense, very important. In that sense, what is happening on a much larger level is a systematic destruction of the federal system of the country. And that is the root of the whole problem. India is a union of states. And unless there are no states, there is no union. The union government is a product of a number of states coming together in a constitutional manner and choosing to actually have a union government which works in cooperation with, in tandem with the governments in the different states. Each of these different sets of governments have their own particular kinds of powers, areas in which they can legislate, areas in which they can make rules. One is called the state list, the other is called the central list. And then you have the concurrent list, where both center and the state have, if not equal powers, shared powers. And if there is a conflict between the center and the state in a concurrent list, naturally, because the central government represents the will of the entire country, the will of the parliament shall prevail, and their legislation shall prevail over the legislation of the state legislatures. But what is happening, in fact, is that over and above the kind of legislation that is being done on the central level, what the central government is actually trying to do through the central agencies like the UGC, agencies like the National Disease Control Agencies, different kinds of agencies which are being created by Parliament as secondary subordinate legislation, they are undercutting the powers of the state legislation, of the state legislative assemblies to create their rules, to create their legislations, and thereby the center interfering, intervening, getting into the province of the powers of the states themselves. Governors are the best examples of this. What happened in Tamil Nadu, what happened in Kerala, what is happening in West Bengal is that a governor who has been given the right of the chancellor, the position of the chancellor, not by parliament, not by the president, but by the legislative assembly, in continuation of a colonial system where the provincial governors were the topmost officers or the chancellors of universities. Almost in continuation of that, all our universities had their own governors as the chancellors. And this chancellorship has been awarded by virtue of the office of the governor by the legislative assemblies themselves. But what the governors then proceeded to do was completely ignore the will of the people as represented in the legislative assemblies and act on their own, in inverted commas, but to be more precise, act under the instructions of the central government by subverting the will of the state governments and the universities of the states, appointing vice chancellors, appointing officers whom they like without any consultation with the universities or the state governments, or in some instances, dismissing vice chancellors due to certain technical reasons, flimsy technical reasons, let me say. The reason I'm saying this is because, ultimately speaking, it is not possible for us to look at education, higher education or primary education, as a field in itself. what is happening in higher education is part of the larger process of, what shall I say, a kind of oligarchic tyranny that is taking place, a kind of totalitarianism that is slowly creeping into the entire political structure of the country, making its presence felt in different areas of life, and in the same way, making its presence felt within education and higher education in particular. Now, what the UGC has consistently been doing for the last several almost years is that, let us face that, the UGC has only three powers as awarded them, given them by the parliament. It is to actually set or maintain standards in education, teaching, sorry, in examinations, teaching, and research. Just three areas: examination, teaching, and research. Till the 2000, late 2000s, these were the only areas in which they actually came out with regulations too. They came out with regulations about the qualifications of faculty, about the ways in which research can be conducted, the ways in which student admissions can be made, what are the basic qualifications that are required. But from 2008 onwards, you see a radical change. And slowly they are creeping into, crawling into the area of university governance on the one side and university finance on the other side. Yes, it's a University Grants Commission, accepted. But how money should be spent, how governance should be conducted, who should be the vice chancellor, what are the qualifications of that, what should be the selection committee, etc. All of these came to be brought in from the 2008 onwards. And the kingpin of this entire system came to be the governor, who is not an officer of the state, who has nothing to do with the state whatsoever, but someone who has been imported by the central government and placed by virtue of the nomination of the president. So what the UGC has been doing in effect has become, the UGC has become the agency through which the central government wields its power, not only in the central universities, which they already do, but in almost all the other state universities. And we are speaking of 95% of the student population, 95% of the universities of the country. This UGC has become, effectively speaking, that agency, that instrument through which all the universities in the country could be brought together under one umbrella of power, and that umbrella being decided, determined by the central government itself. There seems to be a notion with the UGC that it's very strange. It's very strange in the sense that you have these people sitting in some kind of a 24-story building in New Delhi on the top floor and making these regulations without ever having any idea of what kind of requirements, what kind of challenges, what kind of hopes and aspirations that a person in rural Maharashtra or a person in rural Andhra Pradesh would have. They are totally unconnected. They're totally unconnected with the ground realities of the students, the ground realities of the institutions, the ground realities of the societies in which these institutions are growing. And sitting there, what they are effectively creating is this huge system which appears to be one that follows the dictum of one size fits all. And this is a basic problem. In a country like India, with multiple communities, different identities, different types of languages, different living styles, different kinds of religions, different faiths, it is impossible to actually have a one size fits all. A pure democracy, a proper democracy, is not like a Procrustean bed. You cannot just cut off your leg in order to fit the bed. You should have beds that fit the lengths of each person or each community. In that sense, universities and higher education institutions should ideally be permitted to formulate their programs, to formulate their research agendas, to formulate their admission procedures, to formulate their entire processes in terms of the student body who are their consumers or who are their clients. Consumers may be a wrong word to use, but who are their students? And a student in rural Andhra Pradesh will have an entirely different vision about what his education should be than a student in urban Mumbai. And so, in terms of the different social demographic contexts in which these students come from, each university, each institution should have the autonomy, the responsibility, the accountability to create programs that are best suited for the aspirations and the requirements of those people for whom they're providing education. But what the UGC does is to deny this possibility of difference, deny this possibility of divergence, of plurality, of diversity, and everything being brought into one singular mold, which willy-nilly favors, helps, puts at advantage certain sections of the population, especially in the urban areas, and also in terms of the social hierarchy, certain sections who are in the upper echelons of society itself. The minorities are left behind, the rural people are left behind, women are left behind. In fact, ultimately, this becomes a kind of system where a small elite is catered to, and they become the successful people while the others are actually left behind. Now, if you look at this entire system for UGC, in the UGC system itself, they for a long time brought in this idea of numerical values in promotion, in selection, in admission, everywhere, numerical values. Now, there is a big question that as a teacher I have always asked myself. A student who comes in, say, from a very urban, affluent background with 80% marks for her undergraduation, and she comes for MA, and in the first semester, she makes a progress and becomes scores around 82%. Now, another girl who comes from a very rural background, probably also from a backward community in sociological terms, who is a first generation learner, who has never ever had the opportunity of going to college before anyone else in her family. She comes in with a score of 56 and struggling really hard, she manages to make it up to 67. My question is this. In our system, this girl who progressed from 80 to 82, the urban girl, will be considered higher in merit. But the girl who struggles so much to move from 56 to 67 will be considered still inferior. In terms of effort, in terms of the progress made from the position from where they started, in terms of the kind of advantages and disadvantages that these different students face, who has made the better progress? Who is a better student? Relatively speaking, and in terms of relative progress, if given a chance to do it that way, I will surely place the second girl in the first position. But because of this numerical scale that is almost all pervasive, what is happening with the higher education today is that ultimately the real learning or the real kind of imbibing of knowledge and creation of knowledge, where a person becomes involved in such a manner, not only to change herself, but also to change the knowledge at hand, that becomes impossible. It just becomes merely a matter of scores, 1 over 2 over 3, and so on and so forth. Now, it is along with this that one has to say a few things, a very simple set of things in connection with this. Very recently in the parliament, there were a few figures read out about what has been happening to scholarships for marginalized communities. We have all been hearing about how, as Dipsita herself mentioned, that scholarships and the financial support for the marginalized communities have been decreasing, dwindling. But to what extent? To what measure? Have we really looked at it? If we really look at it, we are in for a huge shock. A shock which actually makes it clear to us that the entire democratic, socially accountable fabric of our country is being torn apart totally. I'll give you a few figures. Pre-matriculation scholarships for OBC students have come down by 77% over the last 5 years. Those for minorities have plunged 94% in 4 years. Or pre-matriculation, scholarships for ST students have dropped 57%. The National Fellowship and Scholarship for Higher Education for ST students has seen a 99.99% reduction, while its allocation dropping from 240 crores in the revised estimates for 2024 to just 0.02 crore in the budget estimates for 2025. I am quoting all this from the parliamentary transcripts. The National Overseas Scholarship Scheme has also been cut by 99.8%, falling from 6 crore in 2024 to 0.01 crore in 2025. The pre-matric scholarship for minorities allocated 326 crore in 2024 will now receive only 90 crores, marking a 72.4% decrease. The post-matric scholarship for minorities has been reduced by 69.9% from 1,145 crores in 2024 to 343.91 crore in 2025. Other allocations have also been adjusted, including the Maulana Azad National Fellowship for minority students, which saw a 5% cut. The free coaching and allied schemes for minorities initially saw a 65% reduction, but then it was reallocated. The scheme of interest subsidy on educational loan for overseas students has been reduced by 46.6% from 15.3 crore in 2024 to 8.16 crore in 2025. The education scheme for madrasas and minorities has faced a 99.5% reduction from 2 crore in 2024 to just 0.01 crore. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not just a cut. This is not just a discounting. This is a wholesale, a complete, total throwing out of the entire scheme of scholarships. The constitutional provision provided to every citizen of India that he or she has a right to education, and the constitutional provision being supported by scholarships for needy students who come from financially and socially impoverished backgrounds, has been the backbone of India's education. When I was a student, I paid hardly 20 rupees as as fees. For me, those 20 rupees may not have made much of a difference. It was possible. But I distinctly remember, that nearly 70% of the people who were my classmates were able to actually afford their education because they had to pay only 20 rupees. This fee structure, which is almost next to nil, making it possible for any student worth her salt, with aspiration, with the energy to learn, can learn, has been systematically taken away, where funding has been brought down, so that in every institution, the fee structures have risen on the one hand, and on the other hand, the entire structure, the entire system of financial support, especially for the marginalized, the minorities, are being systematically dismantled. Destroyed is a better word to speak. What is the intention behind this? What is the aim behind this? We spoke about Rohit Vemula. We are creating millions of Rohit Vemulas, effectively speaking. Or that is what the central government is planning to do. by effectively denying education and pushing them, even the intelligent ones, even the capable ones, pushing them into employment of the worst kind. As Dipsita said, workers. But what kind of workers? Workers of the worst kind, workers in the most tertiary levels of work, with no possibility of betterment, of improvement. In the factories and in other places where there is no possibility of any kind of self-enhancement, there is a design behind it. There's a clear design behind it. And that design, even though it is not spoken, even though it is not spelt out, that design is extremely clear. The idea that education is democratic is systematically being taken out. Education is not for all. Education is only for the few. And those few are already decided. If for the past 75 years, as part of a democratic system, this government or this country has followed a system where everyone has a right to education, even though the constitution has not been amended. No, they never amend the constitution. Even though the constitution has not been amended, no changes has been made, that constitutional right is being systematically subverted by effectively prohibiting the possibility of anyone other than the really rich, the affluent, the people who can afford it getting education. Now, it is along with this that one has to see the rise of the private universities. On the one hand, the slow but steady cutting of funds for public institutions, where the bulk, the majority of our students go, the slow denudation of quality there, the filling of those posts or non-filling of those posts, keeping them vacant, teachers not being there, classes not being taught, there being no laboratory facilities, there being no proper classrooms on the one hand, but on the other, the mushrooming of private universities where there is a surplus of facilities, but it is only accessible to a small few who can pay. Are divided. Am I back? Hello?
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Sorry.
Yeah, there were some internet issues.
So a binary divide is being created, whereby some people, a very select few, have the access to the best kinds of education, and on the other hand, the others are, pushed into the worst form. Now, there is one interesting thing to be said here, and that interesting thing is, it is a fact that with the massive changes that is taking place in the knowledge economy today, with the kind of technologies coming up, according to a number of studies, the kind of employments that we have, methods of ways of employment, kinds of jobs that we have today, nearly 60 to 70% of them are going to become redundant in another 20 to 30 years, even 10 years. A lot of jobs, even higher end jobs, which we are so used to today, for example, all those students who are going in for BSc Computer Science or BSc Software, etc., all those jobs are going to go out the window and they're going to be replaced by something entirely different. Are our universities getting prepared in any manner of speaking, or are they even envisioning the possibility of actually thinking forward, looking forward, and creating flexible curricula, flexible programs of study, which can actually, if not fully address what is going to happen later, at least anticipate some of the things that may be required? Now, this is where another interesting thing is happening. The entire UGC system of education, which is still very, very heavily content based and not based upon the development of certain faculties, development of certain kinds of thinking skills, the development of certain kinds of critical skills, or they're not skills entirely speaking, because the whole idea of skilling is a bit of a problem. But to solve problems, to address something and be able to do it from your own side instead of just reproducing something that you've learned. The entire system of UGC education is still so heavily reliant upon a content-based education. That content is going to go out the window. And who is going to be the loser? The students in the public universities. While in the private universities, new forms of pedagogy, new forms of research-connected pedagogy, new forms of field-related pedagogy are being introduced, making them much, much more skilled. And again, skilled not purely in the terms of manufacturing, no, but skilled as a human being, skilled as an intelligent being, using one's own intelligence to solve problems, to go forward. That is being fostered in the private universities. Again, we are coming back to this issue, to this question of some people being provided the best, the others being left behind. Now, I know I don't have much time. There are a couple more things that I want to say here, which is along with the, it is Vishu here, so there will be firecrackers from outside. I hope it doesn't become too, shall I say, disturbing for you. I've tried to shut all the windows. Sorry for the noise if that comes up. Now, two major things. Number one, ideally speaking, what are universities? Universities are spaces where learning takes place through dialogue, through critical dialogues. And in terms of such critical dialogues, it would be necessary for there being a kind of democratic ethos at work, where students should be able to question, students should be able to critique. Sometimes students should be able to even lose their temper. Whatever. What I'm trying to say is that freedom has to be there. If there's a very curious thing that I see. When I was a student, say in the 1970s, 80s, this culture was getting slowly strengthened. There was, of course, respect. There was, of course, consideration for the teacher and everything. But at the same time, this questioning mode was getting more and more intense. And as I got to be a teacher, we and our colleagues, what we saw was that culture getting strengthened even further. So much so that the teaching process, in many instances, not always, at least in postgraduate classes, and the entire campus itself, coming to be more of a shared process. Not teaching and learning, but learning together or teaching one another. That entire system is being dismantled. The UGC system of mentoring, of masters, and the Indian knowledge systems, etc., they are reassuring a different kind of system which goes back perpetually to the earlier Gurukul system, where the Guru is supposed to know everything, while the student is considered, tabula rasa, to receive everything. Dipsita spoke here about what happened to the student at TESS. It's not just there, it's everywhere. What you find most objectionable to the authorities today is a student who is ready to speak up, is a student who can ask questions, is a student who stands up. And by nailing down that nail which stands up, it is almost like sending a message to the rest of the student community. And by making regulations, making systems of discipline, as Tata Institute of Social Sciences has already done, about where to speak, when to speak, what not to speak. What is being instituted is a culture of regimentation, almost like in the army or the military, where you obey, you follow, you just do as you are told to do. And what comes out of that are a set of people who are amenable to being ordered about, amenable to follow the pattern, amenable to actually take on the responsibility of taking that regimented state forward. Universities as a space for critical culture. What is the word university? Universitatis. Knowledge, all kinds of knowledge are possible. But universities as a space for critical culture, for critical introspection, for making mistakes, for making errors and then finding the right way. A place where people share knowledges by working together. All that is being taken out. And universities are slowly getting to be not just in terms of tanks being installed in JNU, but the actual culture of universities are getting to be much, much more regimented. Struggle is the only way, and loss will be part of that. With my gray hair and my old years, it may be easy for me to say that. It's not easy. Believe me, it is not easy. But the real problem that one has to realize is that what is being done today, the effect of that is not going to be limited to today or just tomorrow. That this is going to keep on visiting, continue affecting decades, generations of our country, as has happened in many places in the rest of the world. The wastage of generations who are pushed out of that stream of knowledge, that steady flowing stream of knowledge. You know, it is easy to get out of a stream, to get back into the stream is a Herculean task. I will conclude with just one remembrance of a book that probably you should all read, which will give you an inkling of what we are in for. In 1939, Erika Mann, M-A-N-N, the daughter of Thomas Mann, the great German novelist, after an extensive study of the German educational system under the Nazi regime, wrote a book called School for Barbarians. School for Barbarians. What she did was, it was not a sociological work, it was a half fiction work in the sense that she collected so many case studies, so many cases, brought them together into a kind of manageable narrative so that one story will have fragments of different cases. And she looked at the way in which the schools, the colleges, the universities, starting from the pre-primary schools, how they were being changed into extensions of the Nazi party. They were taking on the same form of the Nazi party. The Kinder Nazis, the child Nazis, for example, the youth Nazis, for example, where universities themselves came to actually have a structure and a form that was very similar to the Nazi party. Please read the book, ladies and gentlemen, and look at our own educational system. The resemblance is uncanny. Uncanny as to make it almost identical. Take a look and we will realize where we stand at this point of time. I don't have words of hope for you. I'm sorry. I don't have words to provide you with some kind of solace. We are all in this together. And how long it's going to last, I'm not sure. But however long it's going to last, let us give it a fight, the best fight that we can fight. Thank you very much. I'm done.
Thank you, sir. Now I think we can move on to the uh, Q&A session. Dipsita, if you take up the question, I guess sir can answer that question.
Shall I take them one by one?
Yes, sir, you can.
Uh, there is the first question, since education is in the concurrent list, how much autonomy do states actually have in resisting or responding to increasing central interference in higher education policies? That's exactly the question. It's on the concurrent list. And being on the concurrent list, there are certain things which can be certain areas which are the prerogative of the central government and certain that are on the state governments. And if the central government chooses so to enact laws in every one of these areas, there'll probably be little that the state governments will be able to do. But I don't think things are going to go that way. Because what has been happening till now is that the central government has not been making any laws infringing upon the rights of the state governments. The rights of the state governments are left there as it is. But through agencies like the UGC, and which is a subordinate body, and under the assumption, the given assumption that the central legislation prevails over the state legislation, even though the UGC legislation is a subordinate legislation, what they're effectively trying to do is subvert state legislations through these subordinate central legislations without it being brought to parliament. You have to realize that none of these UGC regulations are ever discussed in parliament. They're tabled in parliament. Tabled means it's kept in parliament on the table for 30 days. And within those 30 days, if anyone comes up with an objection, if anyone asks a question or comes up with an amendment, then it may be discussed. Otherwise, no discussion takes place. Ideally speaking, all these subordinate legislations should be discussed by the Committee for Subordinate Legislations in detail to make sure that none of these subordinate legislations are anti-constitutional or against the basic ethos of the penal code. But you know what? Hardly 1% of these subordinate legislations are ever considered by the committee. So much so that whatever comes in as regulation goes out as approved. There is never really any scrutiny that takes place. And that blindness, that lack of scrutiny is where the central government manages to get their things through. And even if someone were to actually raise an objection, most often what happens is that the speaker will never provide space for that kind of a question. So it's a hard ask. It's a very difficult ask. Ultimately, if it doesn't work, probably the way that Tamil Nadu did right now in going to the Supreme Court, or Kerala is also in the Supreme Court, that's probably the only way. And even going the judicial way, one can only keep one's fingers crossed. It is not a surefire thing anymore. We have to try, keep on trying. That's all I can say. Now, the next question is how lack of research support and diversity will affect the future development of our country in long term. It would be good if you can give some examples. See, the real problem right now is that research is right now the prerogative of the global north. And the global north, especially in scientific research, it is at the global north. Secondly, even in social sciences and humanities research, this is a question that I most often ask. Can we theorize when what we write is never considered theory? Or why is it not considered theory? There is still that old colonial imperial bind whereby we still seem to be consumers of the theory and the science that are created in the north. Unless it is possible for us to create a viable, valid, genuine culture of research in this country, this differentiation, this kind of non-equality will only become more and more pronounced, much more pronounced. The second thing that I would like to add is this. Let us be very clear about one thing. Our problems are not the problems of the West, nor even the problems of many other countries. Our problems are very specific. And even within our country, the problems of different peoples are different. Probably what our research needs to do is to address the specific problems of those people who the researchers themselves are. Most often, people who come into universities, say from a marginalized background, they may have their own narrative systems. They may have their own knowledge systems. But what happens in the university is that those knowledge systems, those narrative systems are taught to be unimportant. And they're slowly being accommodated into insist upon. Why is it that you not actually develop different kinds of narratives, different kinds of research methodologies, different kinds of research systems, which are more to do with the actual realities of the. Okay, with public education inclusively, how do you think the democracy of higher education institutes be preserved? How can students contribute to this? The democracy of higher education is systematically getting dismantled. How can students contribute to this? As I said, at the beginning, none of these things are separate or individual. They are not isolated issues. They are all connected issues. Let us remember that a small change in the curriculum or a small change in the content of history, of sociology, of the removal of a text is not at all unconnected with the removal of a student or the suspension of a student. We think these are two different things. One is to do with syllabi, to do with curriculum. The other is to do with discipline of personal rights, etc. Or on another level, the transfer of a faculty because he published an article which is anathema to say the powers that be. We see these things are very different. And it is in actually being able to see the interconnectedness of all these things because they are all part of a much larger pattern, much larger plan of action. And in addressing each one of them individually as well as part of the larger struggle will be the way to go. And I'm sure there is no recipe for this. There is absolutely no recipe for this. It'll struggles and fights and opposition will be formulated in terms of the challenges that actually call them forth. How can we tackle the question of funding in the present day scenario where we as students are told that market based skills is the only thing that can land us in a job and the economic progress is seen as the only progress that is counted by everyone around us? Very good question, and this is where I will ask you a question. How can you be sure what the market requires tomorrow? Look at artificial intelligence. A lot of things that we are doing right now or we have been doing till yesterday is going to be taken over by AI. It will no longer be necessary for people to do repetitive jobs, reiterative jobs. It will no longer be necessary for people to be there for travel booking or accounts and those things. Many things which are so important in the market today are going to be redundant tomorrow. So, what kind of skills do we mean by market skills? When the market itself is changing and the marketeers themselves are unsure what it is going to be tomorrow. So, what kind of a skill? What happens here is, I'll give you one little example. In Japan, they used to have the system where after education, some corporation like Mitsubishi or Toyota, someone will employ you. They do not expect you to know anything at all. And then they train you entirely with their systems of technology, their systems of work, their methods of administration, and they train you. You become a Mitsubishi man, you become a Toyota man. And once you become a Toyota man, it'll be impossible for you to work in any other company because those systems will be definitely contrary, where Toyota implicitly agrees to hire you for the rest of your life. You will be a Toyota man throughout. That used to be the case earlier. That can no longer be the case because neither Toyota nor Mitsubishi nor any of these corporations are, it will no longer be possible for them to maintain one single system of technology, one single system of work because things are changing so fast. So, how do we have marketing skills or skills that fit the market? Or won't it be better if we have the ability to acquire those skills? The basic ability to acquire flexible skills. I mean, if I may use an example from performance, a person who has learned classical dance will be able to play only the classical dance because that is the language that she has learned. But a person who is in theater can move from one language to the other because he has trained his body in order to be flexible to learn one language of the body and move to another language of the body. It's a kind of thing that is required now. But what is happening in the public institutions is that you're pigeonholed and you are connected only to one set of skills, which is going to be your undoing at a certain point of time. Are these firecrackers making a huge noise in your earphones? You're not hearing
It's
that.
fine, sir. That much.
Yeah, okay. It's banging in my ears anyway. Uh, how can we tackle the question of funding in the present day scenario where we as students okay, market based skills? Yeah, I think I've answered the questions.
Sir, if you have got time, I think we can take one or two more
Sure,
questions.
I'm free. I'm free. No problems. And let's not just make this into a question answer thing. Why don't you also kind of say things? I don't like this playing guru.
So, sir, there are two questions regarding NEP. Uh,
There
do
is
you
a
think national education policy enhance or undermine democratic practices and institutional autonomy within universities. What do you think about the implication of NEP
Oh,
and its
yes, yes.
consequence on the autonomy of higher
Yes, yes.
education?
I know. I just scrolled down. Do you think that NEP 2020 enhance or undermine democratic practice and institutional autonomy? Absolutely not. That's what I said. The whole one size fits all system of NEP is totally against let's take for example the idea of IKS, Indian knowledge systems. Every curriculum, whatever be the subject it is, should include the IKS. And what is IKS ultimately speaking? Yes, of course. I mean, uh, the irony of something like IKS will become apparent only if you change the first adjective into something else. If there is an Indian knowledge system, why shouldn't there be an African knowledge system? Why shouldn't there be a Pakistani knowledge system? What do you mean by this IKS? The IKS, in that sense, is a certain construct, a construct which actually is very, very partial and narrow, which constructs Indian history in a certain manner, excluding a lot of things. Sanskrit is a brilliant, rich repository of knowledge. There is no doubt about that. But Sanskrit is not just one particular singular stream. There are hundreds of other streams within that. There is a stream of Jainas, of Shramanas, the Charvakas, the question of different kinds of non-Paninian theory included. What are included kinds of knowledges which are amenable to the current dispensation in terms of their understanding Hinduism or Hindutva is. And if you're talking of Indian knowledge system, how is it possible for us to exclude something like the creating the utensils that we did, some of which are still yet not being fully deciphered? Why are they not Indian knowledge systems? Because they are not Hindu? Do you understand my problem? It is totally undemocratic. It is against the very ethos of democracy, ethos of not just democracy, of basic human knowledge in that sense. So it undermines democratic process, no doubts. And institutional autonomy, as I said, again, through the agency of the UGC and the governor, uh, the, is one thing more what one has to say is the system of the NAC accreditation, the UGC systems, they all follow a numerical judgment analytical system where every institution is expected to size up to certain criteria. And this criteria is common across the board. How can an Ayurveda college perform in the same way as a Tata Institute of Social Sciences? How can an architectural college work in the same way as, say, an arts and science college in a rural area? But the criteria are the same. So it's a one size fits all. And because the criteria are same, you end up either creating fictions or you change entirely. You have no choice. You have no flexibility within. A teacher cannot change something because the students need to learn something. In my experience of teaching abroad is one in which the students can actually demand what they want to study. And it is for the teacher to change that so that the students can learn what they want to learn. I still remember in Japan teaching during the Afghan war time. I was teaching a course in South Asia, and the students insisted that they wanted to actually understand Afghanistan. Even though Afghanistan does not, strictly speaking, fall within the purview of South Asia, we decided to do that. I'm not an expert on Afghanistan, but all of us together, the students and I together, worked on Afghanistan, which became a very, very intensive affair. But all of us gained from that in our own ways. So, this flexibility of actually looking at what students want, what they need, that hour and later, that flexibility is lost. Same question again. What do you think about the implication of NEP and its consequences on the autonomy of higher education institutions? What role can students play in resisting authoritarian policies, especially in the face of administrative actions like disciplinary measures? I think you shouldn't be asking an old fogey like me that question. You know, this is a question that you should address. And what can I tell you? After having served the better part of my life and retired, and then enjoying my retirement, what what privilege do I have to tell you how you should resist? I may be able to tell you some experiences probably, but more than that, resistances are ultimately determined by the challenges that they face. And resistance is the form of resistance is determined by the day and the location in which it takes place and the subjects who are part of it. There are no recipes, there are no surefire methods, there are no formulas. One thing that worked in one place may not work another place. But the idea is to be creative in your resistance. And that being creative, you're also, see, resistance is one thing which you transform yourself. It is not an action where you engage, you sing the music of another, you sing the song made by another person. No, you're not singing another man's music. You're singing your music, the music that you may make as you go along. So I would be the last person to tell you how to resist. And I would probably be the first person ready to join you in your resistance, whatever way you choose to do that.
Sir, I guess we can take up one more question or any feedback from someone, and then we can
Please,
join.
let's have feedback if you don't
Yeah,
mind.
if
Just
anyone has
look
got
at
any
what others
feedback,
say.
please.
And they can be critical, whatever. No
Yeah.
problem. Please.
Yes, Lagan, please.
Yes, thank you, sir, first of all, for this insightful lecture. I think a lot of things have been contextualized, and we also got to learn a lot of new things and new perspectives. Not a critical thing, but what I wanted to do was just also to relate it with some of the things which are happening in TIS, and especially regarding the admission process only, what I am feeling. Here, the way admissions used to happen, or in many other universities also, after the implementation of NEP and a common university entrance test being introduced, what we are seeing is like a further homogenization of the campus spaces and of the students who are coming in, because what these tests are doing is not actually evaluating an individual's competence or interest or whatever in a particular field. It is just like a very arbitrary way of going about an entrance exam. Similarly, in tests, what used to happen was used to be an interview process which used to be there after the entrance test was there. And from this year, what we are seeing, even that has been removed. What the interview process, according to my understanding, used to do was that the professors or the people in that particular faculties were able to gauge and engage with the students who were coming in and who were the aspirants for that particular course. So that is also something I think where we are also struggling. And as a student and as student organizations here, we are resisting. But I think this is also an important thing which relates to and ties into what you have been saying. So yeah, just wanted to point that out.
You're absolutely right. These objective type tests are the bane of quality. Are the bane quality? I'm not speaking of quality as some kind of absolute thing. quality in different sense. It doesn't prove anything. And the other thing, for example, in JNU and many other universities, we used to have these disadvantage points where you look at the social background, you look at the cultural background, the educational background, and through the interview, the teachers can also gauge the excitement, or that's not the right word to use, but the aspiration of the student. Excitement is also a good word, which is going to take that student further forward. But in the objective type questions, this person is lost. The subject is lost. What you have is just a piece of paper. And so a person who can actually score higher but has no interest in it or cannot really sustain that interest gets in, denying a person who could have done much better that possibility. But this is, see, remember this. For teaching positions, for the national, what is it called? The research, effort,
The
research,
National Eligibility Test. NET?
NET, that's right, NET, and the research fellowship. Earlier, 15 years or so earlier, I used to be an examiner. It used to be a detailed, descriptive, a little bit of objective questions, but descriptive questions, analytical questions, critical questions. At least it was possible for you to actually see the person through that to some extent, at least what kind of understanding the person has, what kind of critical system a person has. And even if, and this is the most important thing, even if, I mean, most often the problem is language. See, the command over the English language is taken to be such that it actually overrides everything else. But if you have a descriptive kind of thing, where there may be problems with the command over the English language, but even through that, it's possible for you to see the way in which the person has actually understood that. And that can be factored in. All that has gone. So even for teaching and research, you have objective type question tests. So what can I say? Let us say that we've been trying so hard from that time onwards. Susi Tharu, Sujata Patel, all of us have tried so much to actually change that, and nothing could be done. And the reason nothing could be done is because they didn't want anything to be done. That's the whole point. They don't want anything to be done. They want it to be arbitrary. And in the arbitrariness, it is also possible, I'm sorry to say this, it is also possible to play. It is also possible to manipulate. An objective type question paper or answer paper is easy to manipulate rather than a descriptive type and an interview based kind of thing. I haven't said anything, but that's what it is too.
Thank you very much, sir. There's been a lot of questions. I think we do have some time constraints, and Dipsita was also not with us for a short while because she had some emergency, and now
I
she's back.
understand.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think Dipsita, if you ask or have some final comments, please.
No, actually, I don't have much to add, but I'll just add because what Sir has said, it has triggered a very recent memory of art. He said very rightly that if it's a MCQ kind of a examination, it's very easy to manipulate. You'd be knowing in West Bengal just few days back, 26,000 teachers have lost their job because of a scam that the government has run, where they have actually tampered the OMR sheets and given jobs to people in exchange of money. And a lot of people who didn't have teacher has been a teacher with the tampering of the OMR sheet and by exchange of money. So he is absolutely right, and I agree to the sense that when entrance examination used to be descriptive, when I have written for the JNU entrance, there are so many people who have got more marks than me in my graduation. They didn't clear the JNU entrance, but I did because it's what JNU entrance is earlier NEP they were looking for. It's not just whatever knowledge you have in a very informatively, but also what you think, how you see things, what has been your perspective about your knowledge. That is something that has been completely missed in this new kind of examination system. And the kind of students that you're getting in university also, our professor has rightly pointed out, they lack that enthusiasm, they lack that excitement, and primarily, they lack that spirit of research. A lot of people who are trying for UPSC and everything have no problem with those examinations, but research institutions like the Higher Education Institute of HU, JNU, or even the TIS, they cannot be our spaces for like a shortcut for the UPSC experience. This universities and institutions were made so that the people in India, the young people in India, can think and can produce knowledge. That has been completely missed through this whole entrance examination. So I have nothing more to add, but my agreement, and I want to extend my revolutionary greetings to everyone, all the students who have joined today, fighting against the disruption that we have seen in the beginning only, how some people thought it is the right thing to do. This is the kind of atmosphere they want. They want to disrupt any kind of democratic discussion. They want to impose their views on people. They want to deconstruct whatever we have constructed for all these years as democracy. I think all of our fight together collectively is to ensure that our democracy remain as a democracy, that our country is run by the mighty constitution, not some religious text or not some religious organization or some religious group. So with that, I want to thank everyone for conducting this very audacious, very brave attempt, fighting the authoritative regime that all of us are fighting together. Thank you, Red Seats. Over
Thank
to you,
you.
Ajman. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Dipsita. So uh, we are out of time, so I'm inviting Aksa to the vote of thanks. We can wind up the session shortly. Over to you, Aksa.
Yeah. Hello, good evening, everyone. Good evening, sir. Good evening, everyone. My name is Aksa, and I am a student of Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Hyderabad, and I'm a master's student doing in rural development, and I'm also a member of the Progressive Students Forum. And as we come to the close of this deeply engaging session, it's my privilege to deliver the vote of thanks on behalf of the BSML organizing committee. I thank Professor M.B. Narayanan, academician, author, and former Vice-Chancellor of Sree Sankaracharya University. Sir, your insights were very needed and very necessary in an era where educational institutions are increasingly under pressure. So thank you for teaching us about the realities of the knowledge economy, as you said, and about the current trajectory of higher education in India. And thank you for putting forward the brutal reality of what's happening to higher education in this country, the rampant privatization, the explosion or the increasing of self-financing colleges that treat students like customers, the rollback of minority scholarships, and the hollow promises that the NEP has put forward, which only deepened exclusion and centralized control. Thank you. In a time when the ruling regime is systematically dismantling public education, discouraging dissent, reducing education to a commodity, your words were a powerful reminder of what is at stake. You held up a mirror to the BJP led government's agenda, exposing it on how it threatens to convert our educational institutions to silent spaces instead of critical ones. And thank you for quoting this line. Thank you for telling this that struggle is the only way. Thank you, sir. You didn't hold back. That's exactly what we need right now. And thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Thank
I
you.
would also like to sincerely thank our chair for this session, Dipsita Dhar, student activist from JNU, for anchoring today's session with such clarity. Thank you, Dipsita. Your address on student rights and campus democracy, as well as your strong voice against the unjust suspension of Ramdas from just Mumbai and the ongoing pattern of detentions and suspensions in campuses across the country, about the institutional murder of thank you for institutional murder of Rohit Vemula, and all the injustice faced by students who dare to question and dissent. Thank you, Dipsita, and a heartfelt thanks to all the teachers, students, and the participants from various campuses who joined us today. And finally, a note of appreciation to the Bhagat Singh Memorial Lecture Organizing Committee. Thank you for all your commitment, and thank you for your effort you've put in for making this event a grand success. Thank you for everything that you've done, for creating, and thank you for the progressive spirit of Bhagat Singh, and for creating a space where dissent and dialogue can thrive. Once again, thank you all to everyone. Thank you, and live long revolution.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much for listening so patiently. So, shall I log off? Thank you.
Thank you, sir.